Right, this is a quick tutorial to look at declicking the TTArtisan 50mm f2. So I've just taken the cap off, as you can see. You've then got the ring with the branding on. This is actually screwed in, and this is what's hiding the screws you need to get to. So we're going to use a lens tool. We're going to use a rubber one. So you can get these as kits of all different sizes off Amazon, probably off eBay as well. And basically all that happens is you press it against the glass, apply pressure. I say against the glass, it's the outside, so it's actually just getting the ring itself. And we're going to... so there we go. So the way this works is there are 3 screws holding this together. So do keep this in mind. If these were to come loose over time, your lead does start wobbling. You don't want that, especially if you're supporting the anamorphic weight. So what you want to have before you start doing this is some decent enough thread lock to hand. So I'm going to use some thread lock on these screws when I put them back in. And it's worth noting at this point, this glass is completely loose. So you can actually take that out. Which I'm going to do at this point. And because I've got it on video, it doesn't want to budge. There we go, so I've got that out. I'm going to store that somewhere safe. So that leaves us here. So you can see the aperture there. So I'm going to leave that closed whilst I work on it. And then I'm going to take these out. So you just need a crosshead screwdriver. This is a 2.5mm incidentally. Make sure whatever screwdriver you do, it fits well, and press hard. Just so you don't slide on screws and never damage them. These ones aren't too bad, unlike a lot of anamorphic lenses where they'll be glued in. Make sure you've got somewhere to put them so you don't lose them, so you can just use the front cap. And now you should be able to wiggle this loose. So there we go. Bit of a tug there I had to do. There's actually a ball there which you'll see it's come out. Hang on, I think we have got the spring still in there. That can cause a problem if you leave that in. You need to try and get the spring out. It doesn't always do this, to be honest. Otherwise I'd have had a tool to hand immediately for it. There we go. I've just used a small hex key, pressed it in, got it off that way. So you can see now we've got the empty hole. Oh, looking down here below, I'm forgetting, it's just up here. So that's where we're looking. So now you can just put it back together. Yeah. F16, there we go. You can see the marking there, F16. So then I just have to line this up for the screws. That looks perfect. So as I mentioned before, you want to put a bit of thread lock on these. Make sure you've got some kitchen towel or something, just so it's pretty difficult to just put out the amount you want. So the end of this, make sure you clean your hands thoroughly, because these thread locks can be quite toxic. They can be quite toxic to breathe in as well, so don't leave it open longer than you need to. This stuff's actually pretty nasty for the smell. Comes with all these kind of warnings of just like staring at this too long will murder you. Those kind of scary warnings. Do not expose to aquatic life. And a whole host of be careful not to do this. Which means it's got some very awful chemicals in there. This doesn't set straight away, which is a good thing as well, because sometimes if you do something wrong, you need to take it apart. Not that you can get it wrong at this stage, but just as a general principle, it's quite good if you've got one that takes a while to set. I've got all those in. There's a little bit of a thread lock around those. I'm just going to see if I can wipe that off. If I can. Don't have to do this, but it's just, I'd rather have it look clean if I can. As you can see, that's all done now, so we can test it already. If we go here, nice smooth aperture, open and close. Now you've got two choices here. You could actually place some glue on the side of the glass and glue it in for later, because if you put the ring back in, that will hold it in. However, you don't have as much of the thread free here. So if you're going to do an anamorphic setup, I actually will glue that in, and that leaves me all these threads inside, so I can put my step-up ring, and it's going to be that bit closer to the glass. So that's what I'm actually going to do now. So bear with me a minute. And I'm going to throw that ball away because it's not needed. Me, I'm infamous for the super glue. I'm a very bad boy. Very bad boy. But I don't care. You can hate me. So we're using a gel-based super glue here so that it doesn't get all runny. And really you want it kind of up the top, so don't go down the side here. Like that, round the side. And that should be plenty to stick it in place. Where, when we put that in. And make sure you don't get it on your fingers and then press it on the glass. There is actually super glue remover, so if you did get some on the glass, you needn't worry, you can get out of it, but yeah, you don't really want to be going down that if you don't have to. That normally goes in easier feeling than that, to be honest. It seemed to be a little bit stiff, but it doesn't matter. It's gone in anyway, so you can see that's all fine. Did no damage. You see with the super glue there, there's a little bit out the edge. Really don't care about that, all doesn't bother me in the least bit. Do keep in mind with the silver one, you are going to get a bit of reflection back unless you think about doing something like flocking, but it's not going to be easy in that gap. So it does suggest as general, if you're going to do an anamorphic setup, if you're really fussy about veiling flare and don't want to add to that, use the black one instead, so that you're not going to get as much reflection back. With the actual step-up ring going in here, you'll have black at the sides anyway from that being screwed in, so it won't be as much as you can see here, but it's still more than you'd get with a black finish. So there, we're done. So if you did want to, you could put that back in if you weren't going to be placing an anamorphic lens onto it later. But as I am, I'm just going to leave that now for well, until at least the morning, and then I'm going to work on it further and show you how you lock the infinity focus. We need to take this ring off the back. Now, funnily enough, on this one, it does have small holes, which you can use a metal lens tool on, but I'm still going to use a rubber lens tool on this, which I had from yesterday. And I'm going to turn that on. It's going to be a little bit stiff. In fact, this one's a lot stiff. I don't know what's going on with this one. It seems to have been a bit difficult. So I got out a metal lens tool and it came off straight off. So at least here you can see the difference. So unfortunately, you might need to own both. I've not experienced one that's been this tough before. So maybe a particular person that did this one in the factory was being overzealous. Even now, as I'm going to top it, so it is coming free now. There we go. Strictly speaking, you don't necessarily have to put that back at the end, but I always do because it just looks tidy. The important bit, you've got these sets of screws either side, and they're what keeps the lens locked together. So we're going to take these apart. I don't think these are thread locked. They come out really easily, and you don't need to thread lock these in afterwards, unlike the screws at the front, which we discussed yesterday. I'm just going to use, no, I've got the front of the lens used there, so I'm just going to use cap at the rear to keep the screws in once I've taken them out. You're better off if your screwdriver happens to be magnetic here. Make your life a little bit easier. It's when they come loose all the way, they don't necessarily just come straight out, they just end up sat there. It's kind of like little brass guides that these are holding in, and it's just trying to get those out. They're not held in too tight, but they'll generally be sat there unless you give it a bit of a tap once you've taken the screws out. That's it, that's one out. Normally just a bit of a tap. It sounds like I'm tapping these harder than I am, just because the way the table echoes. It'd be worth having a slotted screwdriver to hand to help get that out, which I conveniently haven't got. There we go, got it out anyway. Right, so this now means we can literally just unscrew this apart. You need to watch when you are unscrewing this, that where the infinity and meter mark is, there's a screw before there, and it's going to come loose. So we see here, it's going to come loose around about that screw. So if we just remember that for later, that round about here, it's just so that when you're going to put it back in again, if you come back to the same point and go in reverse, it's then going to lock down correctly to where it should be every time. But you just have to remember, because it can screw in all over the place, this, and yeah, you don't want to be faffing afterwards, especially when you see what naughty things are going to take place. At this point, we want to get the grease off, so that's going to be the first task. Obviously, you could use a bit of kitchen towel, but this is pretty crap for this job, so you can use it to start with, but then you're going to want some material, so try and get an old rag, you know, maybe you've got an old t-shirt that doesn't fit anymore or is ripped, or get a towel that's no longer being used, or cloth. Something along those lines, something that's going to get into the grooves to get the grease out. Because it's not entirely obvious where all the grease is. You know, sometimes you can see the shine and that, but there's, you know, there's a fair bit in these. And for the task that awaits us, we need the grease out, or as much of it as possible. Otherwise you can become a cropper. So here I've got some towel. I'm going to just press it in a bit more. Yeah, I'm just touching it with my finger as well. It feels quite good. I know for a fact there'll be some still in the threads, but you're just doing your best job basically. So say you're never going to get this perfect, so it's just doing a relatively decent job. So we now have the grease cleaned off. This is the time for the magic potion. So this is where we're going to use some thread lock. So this is stuff that takes at least 20 minutes to set. You definitely do not want to use super glue here. Do not, under any circumstances, use it. It will actually set well before you're sorted. So I'm going to put some thread lock actually on the rear part of the barrel into the threads. Don't go absolutely crazy, just enough where you know it's going to definitely stick this, but you don't want it dripping out the end either. So this one's quite runny. It's runny compared to like your gel super glue, for example, which is quite viscous. So I'm going to put that there, and I'm going to put some on threads there, just a little bit. There we go. And now we're going to put this back together. So we're going to remember what we looked at before. So in this case, I had the red dot here, and I looked at the infinity mark in the screw there, and it was before there, wasn't it, or around there. So about here, I'm twisting back, should get us to where we were. Yeah, is it? I'm not sure. Doesn't look right. No, that's not coming right. If you look at your markings here, this is about the height it should be, but clearly the F2 mark should be in line with there. It's past, so we're not quite in right there. Oh, no, we're right. What we do here is when I'm looking here, I'm also looking at the back so that if this was lined up, because it can actually go past there, and then what you're looking at, because that isn't lined up with the outer marker, we know that isn't aligned right. So what we're looking at top for the height is misleading. So really you just want it so you see the letter. So it shouldn't be like this where you've got a load of space above it. The letter should be not quite touching, but close when this is right. So I know I've placed this in correctly. So what we do now is we simply put it back together. So I've just taken this apart again, actually. So I screwed it up. I just thought, no, this isn't right, because it wasn't turning to infinity then, stopping. So when I screwed this back together again with the red mark, it just wasn't quite on in quite the right place. I just tried again. So when I came off here, it was looking for the red mark, looking for that screw down the bottom, just coming in just a bit behind it, coming down, and then I just looked down here again, so these were aligned, and then seeing, but was I on infinity? So it's, can you go to infinity and these be close enough? Let's have a look. Yes, so I can get to infinity there, and that's, you know, those are more or less aligned. They've only just slipped out with me spinning it around to show you on the camera, to be fair. So there we go. So I know I can screw that back together now. But say if you'd used something that was quick setting, you know, I'd have already been in bother. Because bear in mind, I've got to get this onto a camera and set the infinity as well. So, you know, he's slightly on the clock. What I will say with these lenses, certainly when observing them with the L mount, is they focus quite a bit past infinity, so you can't trust the marks that are on them. So you have to do these by eye on your camera. You can use an EVF, or ideally I'd have it put onto a 4K monitor with the HDMI output when you're looking through it, and get it as sharp as possible. Right, before I go off and do this, I'll just give you a quick nosy. So I've set this up on my camera. As it happens in my case, I've got an EVF if I want to use that. Although I'm likely to put it onto my monitor, depending whether I've got HDMI kicking about immediately to hand. So what you would do is, I would start off by the infinity there and work your way back, looking at the image, a little bit backwards and forwards until you've got it bang on sharp. And when it's sharp, you would basically just leave it be. Leave it on your camera. I would actually keep your camera set up, you know, lift it up, whatever, so it's horizontal. And then leave it there. And I don't risk it for, you know, the rest of the day. I'll leave it till the next day, make sure it's completely set before I mess with it again. Right, so I put a HDMI cable into the camera, which is going to a 4K monitor. That just allows me to monitor the image with a little bit more detail than I'd see in the EVF. I'm focused on a distant scene, so some houses and trees. So you really want to look at something far away, a tower block or something would be brilliant, but whatever's just got some contrast. Check YouTube for tutorials on focusing your infinity, because I'm not covering that in any detail here. I've just left the thread lock here to dry because I'm happy with the image I'm getting. So around 12 hours have passed now, so you don't have to wait a full 24, but it's long enough that it's actually locked in place. And it's now solidly in place from the thread lock. As you can see here, the real infinity position was past the infinity mark, but not as far as 5 meters. What we can do is we can change the focus ring and make that infinity just as a cosmetic nice touch. Now be aware, one of the things to be careful about putting on the thread lock is not to put too much on the bottom section, which we saw yesterday, because it can ooze out and get onto the back of the focus ring, which I didn't realise. It actually happened on this, but I was able to just free it with my hands. But yeah, I'd not had that happen before. So the example one I showed yesterday, I must have just put a tiny bit too much on for the bottom piece, but not to worry, it did no harm. So there are 3 screws around the body. Sometimes just doing 2 loose will do the job. I think I've got all 3 here loose enough. So yeah, so once it's loose, the focus ring will just slide, so you can put it onto infinity there. And then I'm just going to slide this out so I can reach it with my screwdriver, and I'm just going to lock the screws into place. One of the screws on this can be pretty stiff, but often you can get away with just loosening 2, so you might be all right even if one of them's a bit stiff. So there we go. That's now marked up as being an infinity mark anyway, just for the cosmetic niceness, which just leaves putting the back ring back in. This one, as we noticed when I was actually taking it out, it's a bit awkward. It was grinding a bit and squeaking. So I'm still going to be better off, although I can start it with my fingers. I'll switch to the metal lens tool and do it properly. Just make life easier. Right, so that's done. So at this point, what I would do is I would be putting on my anamorphic adapter, or if I've had to get a step-up ring first to go on, is I would put that on. If I was putting a step-up ring on like this, I would be putting thread lock on as well, and having that as a permanent attachment to this lens, because this is another point where it can just, it could come loose in practice. So from my viewpoint, it's just not worth it. So usually for my anamorphic clamp, whatever that is, to get onto the lens itself, for example, with this one I've prepared earlier with the RAF camera part, the step-ups thread locked and the clamps thread locked onto that, so none of that can come loose. The rest of it secures with screws anyway, so they're part and parcel of the design for the other connections on that lens. So there you go. Hopefully you've found that useful and given you some ideas, and hopefully no one that's watched it has cried at seeing that lens abused. Right, catch you all later. Bye.